morning. Welcome to the Fantasy Formula One podcast. I'm Paul. That's Ben.
Hey.
Thank you for joining this conversation. It is what we'll be talking about anyway. Feel free to talk to us on the social medias at the Fantasy Formula One podcast or email us at info@fantasyformula1podcast.com. Today we're discussing some audience feedback we got. Got some questions we're going to go over with that. Sprint points versus the regular Grand Prix points. We have one sprint weekend under our belt. We've got some numbers. We're discussing standings about where people are at in the world right now. And then for the Miami Grand Prix coming up this weekend, we have some an interesting build option that became available as points and dollar values have changed. And then we're going to play prospect suspect from the top down. Everyone on the list, we're going to discuss whether prospect or suspect, and we'll go more into that in a few minutes.
Sounds good.
Audience feedback. We had somebody reach out to us on TikTok, and there were some misunderstandings or some questions about how we can say it's positive in any way, shape, or form that Lewis Hamilton qualified so poorly in China.
I think it's P18. Right?
P18, yeah, it's at the back. And in the last podcast, I said that it could be positive that he qualified so poorly. So I want to clarify that. And so where I was going with that is that if you have somebody the caliber of Lewis Hamilton, then you would much rather them qualify poorly than you would have them qualify well and finish poorly.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay.
No, again, I think this harkens back to, first and foremost, there's just that fundamental difference between an actual Formula One race and a fantasy Formula One race. And it also calls back to our discussion of when we were doing an analysis on Sergio Perez, how we were talking about where he's a solid driver, but you're not going to see him move up or down too far from where he starts. You can rely on him to be consistent. Whereas a driver like Hamilton, he will fight through the grid and work and work his way up. And so regardless of where you start, moving up gets you points.
True.
So if you can start low, work your way through the grid and get up into a points position, you're not only netting those points for that position, but you're getting all the points for all the people that you passed along the way. So that's still a great thing from a fantasy perspective.
Agreed. And I didn't think about it until you just said it. You don't lose points for qualifying poorly.
Correct.
So as soon as you qualify P18, you're not getting any negative. You're just qualifying P18.
Yeah.
As soon as you qualify P9, well, then you're getting what 2 points or 1 point or however it works. So as soon as you qualify low and you said finish high, then you're getting all those points.
And that's, and I would actually almost say too, and you please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. We've been so high on Haas this year because they have started low, worked together, driven strategically, and actually, gotten quite a few net positive fantasy points.
Absolutely.
In fact, far more than Hamilton to this point, showing that they are such a bargain compared to him. So, if anything, if you have Hamilton on your fantasy team and you've paid the money for him, he has not been paying off for you throughout the season at all. So, if anything, if you still have him, his starting at P18 is only a good thing for you. As long as he finishes the race, as long as his car holds out for him, that affords him so much more of an opportunity to actually get you points for your team.
I completely agree. And since you brought up him versus Haas, right? Last race, Kevin Magnussen got 9 points for overtaking.
Yeah.
Right. And it just shows that, hey, you got it. He's Haas. He's towards the back, but he'll get you 9 points. The same amount of points you would get for winning a sprint.
Yeah.
He got for just passing people. And so Kevin Magnussen so he got you 48 points. He has a total of 48 points this year. Kevin
Does he
Magnussen.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Lewis Hamilton has a total of 34.
Well, and again, this harkens back to the lesson that we learn week in and week out in fantasy. You only work with your top tier drivers that you're going to throw that 2x on. And then you only have the spare change drivers near the bottom who, they're a higher liability, but for them, the win is that they finished the race.
Exactly.
And that they didn't cost you 20 points in a DNF.
Correct.
And right now, everyone in between which I think would include the Alpines, the Mercedes, even the McLarens. Which again,
they had a great race last week.
That's the thing. I experimented with that last week. It still wasn't enough. To be worthwhile.
Yeah.
You want top tier and you want bottom of the barrel drivers who will not hurt you. You want top tier drivers who will perform. Bottom of the barrel drivers who will not crash. And that is the formula for success. Everyone in between is way too expensive for their value. So if you happen to have Hamilton, who I would say is too expensive right now based on the vehicle that he's driving, you may as well start him. Hope that he starts at P18 because he will at least net you some points with overtakes.
Because he's arguably faster than half the field.
Exactly,
he's just not faster than the winning.
It's when you get up to that P9, P8, P7 position, he's not gonna be competitive beyond that.
No, well said. Well said. Moving on to sprint race versus Grand Prix race. I got my numbers that I wadded up without writing them down. So I took the average of all the first 5 Grand Prix that were just Grand Prix, no sprint. And on average, I took the average of the limitless teams. So the guys who put in your limitless, your Infinity, you can get all the best drivers. I went online, found the top of those, and averaged their points. On average, the limitless driver for the first 5 Grand Prix got you 353.5 points.
Okay, wow.
That is how much your limitless teams, I should say, got on average 353, with a high of, I think the highest one was like 450 for the limitless teams because when Ferrari did really well, and I forget what the low was. The low was like in the 350 range. So in China, the limitless team got 456.
Oh, wow.
Which is a delta, if my mathematicians are right, of 103.5 points above the average.
Yeah.
So if you here's my statement. Ready? If you use your limitless chip on a sprint weekend, you will get 100 points in addition to what you would have gotten if you use it.
Barring the any given Sunday.
As soon as Max Verstappen gets a brake fire, right?
Sure.
Or as soon as both Ferraris crash into each other, because we know that would never happen. As soon as that happens, well, then it's all out the window.
Right.
But if everybody races and does as well as they can based on the way it looks and based on our one sample of sprint weekend and our average of 5 Grand Prix without it, then, and keep in mind that I didn't factor in how many points were won just in the sprint itself because I didn't want to go through and have to rip those apart. But
So this is really interesting though, because and I think what we need to do down the road, or maybe at the end of the season, is put together kind of a calendar of best times to use different tokens, just because we see so many people throw down their 3x during week 1 because you have your most reliable data up to that point. You have Red Bull coming off of 7 or 8 wins at the end of last season going into this season, so you know what you should be able to rely on as well as you're ever going to know it.
That's true.
So 3x is your week 1 token maybe, and then the limitless, I think you just identified. You're a fool if you use your limitless for anything that's not a sprint weekend, because you're cheating yourself out of so many potential points. The impact is so much higher on a sprint weekend, even though it's kind of a sideshow element to a Grand Prix weekend.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of potential there that you're just not accounting for if you don't use it during one of those race weekends.
And to back that up, I would even go, and I haven't done the math on this yet, but I would even go so far as to say you should use your 3x token on a sprint weekend as well, just because there's more points to grab. But also the fact that as soon as you have one driver, when you use your 3x token, when you have one driver become a 3x, you have to have another driver become a 2x. And based on the strategies that you and I are talking about that are championed on this podcast, you have your one real strong driver, your Max Verstappen, your Charles Leclerc, your Sergio Perez, your Carlos Sainz, and then you have Ferrari and Red Bull racing as constructors, and then you fill in the bottom. But the problem is when you go to use your 3x, you need to have a second strong driver.
Yeah.
And I haven't gone into figuring out how to make that work. I haven't thought to use it on my team yet because I'm not sure how to, and I'll figure it out. I just haven't put my brain to it, how to get both strong drivers and not hamstring yourself with constructors.
I got you.
As soon as you take your Ferrari out and you're like, well, I'm going to put in Aston Martin. Well, you're not going, that 2x and that 3x delta, the extra points you would get will get swallowed up by the points. Not that Aston Martin did bad, but they're not Ferrari.
Gotcha.
So,
Yep,
and I
yep.
haven't quite worked out the right way to do that yet.
And see, and I think what scares me about using the 3X later in the season is that mid-season is when you're starting to see a lot of those upgrades come through too. And you know, and by and large, the upgrades are very, very incremental. But every once in a while, you have that disruptor.
McLaren last year,
exactly. That just changes the nature of the grid for the rest of the season. And so, yeah, that makes me a little bit wary of using that later in the year because you think you should be able to rely on something, but there are still dynamics at play that really change the game.
And if people start, and I'm not saying this will happen, and we should probably maybe keep it for a hot goss section, but what happens when, I know we might allude to it later, when people start giving up as soon as the teams, because at some point, to your point, teams are like, you know what, we're done working on this year. We're going to start looking for next year.
Oh, I got you.
As soon as that happens, you know, then you might pick the wrong weekend, or I might pick the wrong weekend to have a 2X and a 3X driver when the guy I'm going to 2X, I don't know, his teammate hits the wall and then takes his car.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that's the big point. You get on average, the blanket statement I'm willing to make is right now you will get 100 points more if you use your limitless on a sprint weekend than if you do on a regular GP weekend.
Dude, that was really good, steering it back to the main point of the conversation.
I'm learning. That's why we have segment titles.
No, you're getting good. This is awesome. Well done.
Moving on to the standings. So we're not going to go through and go person by person, like individual achievement by individual achievement. Just
right.
Broad strokes. Max Verstappen is still at the top of the list with 176 fantasy points. Number 2 is Charles Leclerc with 162. So after 6 races, no, we're coming up on 6 races. After 5 races, he is only up by 14 points.
He being Max.
Max is only up on Charles Leclerc by 14 points. So if you have used, if you had Max Verstappen and I had Charles Leclerc and we both had them be our 2X drivers the whole time, I would be 28 points ahead of you.
Yeah.
Is that worth it?
For the additional additional $8 million $8 million to have Max.
And what do you think? Because my standard reaction is, well, it depends on what you can use those other $8 million for.
And that's exactly it. You know, when you're freeing up $8 million from one driver, that gives you a lot of flexibility to play with in terms of who's more reliable in the Haas Williams Kick Sauber verse. And that really varies week to week, and that's where you still have to pay attention to a lot. So I like the Charles Leclerc pick because it gives you a lot more flexibility. If you're sacrificing everything else for Max, he will get you the points. He will win the race, and if you're going to use your coins as well or your chips, or I got to find just a standard terminology, your infinity stones. You're not going to have a lot of room to play, and here's the thing: when you do have the more expensive top tier driver, and you have to go to your Zhou Guanyu or your Logan Sargent and again, overall Logan Sargent's been working for us, but again,
so far
these are the guys who are prone to the DNFs.
Yeah.
And so that it's not just, oh man, he only got me 4 points. It was, no, he cost me 20 points, and that's a massive swing.
And that's another interesting point that I was going to hit up later, but we'll hit it up now, is Max Verstappen. You can now get Max Verstappen and Red Bull Racing and Ferrari in the same team. Earlier you couldn't.
That's true.
Now you can.
Yeah.
And the reason is because all the teams have gone up and down, and the drivers have gone up in value so much. If you got, your Kevin Magnussen and your Lance Stroll at the beginning of the season, well, now your value has increased almost $5 million.
Right.
And then you can get rid of both of them, get Max on your team, get rid of both of them, get rid of Charles Leclerc. You can get Max on your team now. The issue, and I'm bringing it up now because you just mentioned it, the crux of it is that I did it, and now I have to have Valtteri Bottas, Zhou Guanyu on my team. The 2 Kick Sauber drivers, who they themselves are strong drivers. Kick Sauber is not doing well right now because of their mechanical issues.
Yeah.
So I can have one of my teams has Max Verstappen, Red Bull Racing, and Ferrari. But they also have my 2 standard middle drivers, but they have Zhou Guanyu and they have Valtteri Bottas, and I'm getting ahead of it a little bit, Zhou Guanyu has 9 points for the season. Valtteri Bottas has -5.
Right.
So what kind of risk I'm going to use a naval aviation word. What kind of risk am I taking by having my team have that loadout?
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. And another way to frame that too is, Max Verstappen 176, Charles Leclerc 162. That's a 14-point difference. So for $8 million, you're less than one DNF apart.
Oh,
so
you're right.
So I'll take 14 less points and a lot more freedom to choose my lower tier drivers that I feel like I can rely on.
Yeah, that's true, because for the team I have with that, I have Nico Hulkenberg and Logan Sargent, but I'm missing out on the other Haas drivers. I'm missing out on like Esteban Ocon, who has 30 points. I could have, because I have Hulkenberg, right? I could have Kevin Magnussen and Esteban Ocon in those two spots. Kevin Magnussen, Esteban Ocon, and then Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez, or Carlos Sainz. So I think, at least based on the previous 5 races, I'm going to be, if the next 5 races are like the previous 5 races, I'm going to lose points by having those people on there.
Yeah.
At least that's the way it's looking at now. I think it's worth the risk. It's not my primary team. That's my team 3. But also, I don't know. So anyway, so that's so that's the top 2. So you have Max Verstappen's at 176, Charles Leclerc's at 162, so that 14-point difference. Then Sergio Perez is at 157. So he's only, what 5 points behind Charles Leclerc, but he's almost, he's 19 points behind his teammate.
Correct.
Behind Max Verstappen.
Yep.
And at that point, but these are still, as soon as
it's still close. It's still every week that these numbers are going to vary wildly at this point in the season.
If you divide those differences by 5, that's a 3-point difference over race per race on average, right? And you're right. It was 1 DNF. That's 1 brake lockup going into turn whatever.
Sure.
And
to be fair, Max does have 1 DNF on the season already. So the difference would based on his standard performance, the difference would be more significant if it wasn't for that 1 DNF right now.
Agreed. That's a good way to put it.
To your point though, then Carlos Sainz, again, he's so much flashier of a driver, and he's so much more fun of a pick.
Yeah,
but he drops all the way down to 140 points, and again he also missed an entire race because appendicitis, not fun.
Medical reasons. But the point still stands.
Yeah,
is that he's, is it strong? Yeah, but as soon as you look at him versus Sergio Perez, it's 17. As soon as you look at him versus teammate, it's 20. He missed a race. Would he be up there? Sure. So this is an example, like Max with his DNF for the brake failure, and like Carlos Sainz. Both of them I kind of lumped together. They have one race that cost them, but that was an anomaly,
right?
And I'm not a fan of being like, well, don't worry about that. That doesn't matter.
And it's going to happen to Checo. It's going to happen to Charles Leclerc.
Yeah,
it just hasn't yet this season.
That's a good way to look at it. And then moving further down the roll, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris is P5 with 102 fantasy points, and Oscar Piastri is P6 at 76.
But this is where it gets interesting, is where you have to look at the overall performance of the constructor as well. Lando Norris is $24 million. He's gotten 102 points.
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc, $22 million. He's gotten you 162 points. So again,
there it is.
You can be a McLaren fan, you can be a Lando Norris fan, you can be an Oscar Piastri fan, but they are not going to keep you competitive.
Yeah,
they're at that point where they're getting real F1 points, but the imaginary ones that we talk about are not going to be enough.
Yeah, and that's another really good point, is that you can have your, kind of like we mentioned it a few episodes ago, but we didn't do much with it, is you can have your primary team that you're trying to win the championship with.
All day, yeah.
And then you can have your team where McLaren runs the show. So when you sit down and watch with your friends, or you're like, I love McLaren, man. I'm all in on McLaren. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to win a championship with this other strategy.
Right.
But, and the race teams do that too. They have different tire strategies, different racing strategies, and they see what pans out.
Oh, I mean, and that's the marketing brilliance of fantasy sports, is that look at us. We're talking about every constructor on the list because they are all valid for some reason or another. And if we were just watching to see our team win, we wouldn't care about probably 7 out of the 10 teams. So
yeah, no,
good job, marketing.
Then, and we won't dwell on all these, but for Mercedes, George Russell, man, P7 with 72 fantasy points, split by Fernando Alonso at 61. Then Kevin Magnussen, Haas at 48, right above Lewis Hamilton at 10, P10 with 34. In a world where, and here's my statement, in a world where you have a Haas splitting the Ferraris, but even then as soon as you have a Haas that's doing better than Lewis Hamilton, then that tells you something about Mercedes. No, not Ferrari, it's Mercedes. As soon as you have a Haas doing better than a Mercedes, and that says something about Mercedes.
But that's the thing though. Look at this mix from 7th to 13th. You've got both Haas cars in there, so like Haas is in the thick of the conversation with Mercedes and Aston Martin and Alpine.
Yeah,
that's a team on the rise.
It is, and this even brings more credence to the thought of you have your top team, you have your constructors, you have your top driver, you have your constructors. And man, however you play this middle of the pack, wherever you want to put your money, that's what's going to decide your fantasy F1 season.
Yeah,
right there.
And I'm sorry, I can't let this go. Earlier, you started this part of the conversation with "in a world," and I heard everything else in like trailer guy voice, like narrator voice.
In a world,
yeah, no, we got to go. We got to play this out. In a world where Haas is only costing $8.7 million and is in the thick of the fantasy points conversation, they will not be ignored. And I also have a head cold right now, and so that's why.
So it works really well.
Yeah, I got to use it to my advantage.
That's awesome.
And if you're listening in, and I apologize if I'm doing like stalker breathing into the microphone. I'm trying to be conscious of that, but thank you for your patience.
And then we have the rest of it going down, and we don't need to go point by point. Our countryman Logan Sargent is P14 with 27 points, right behind Lance Stroll, who's right behind Nico Hulkenberg, and they're all within 3 or 4 points of each other. Mm-hmm. Then you have Yuki Tsunoda at P16 with 13 points. And then the bottom, then you have Kick Sauber with Jogan Yu at 9, and then Pierre Gasly with 9, Alex Hamilton with 1, Valtteri Bottas with -5, and then Daniel Ricciardo, man.
You said Alexander Hamilton. You said,
what did I say, Valtteri? Oh, man, what am I doing? I need more coffee.
Alex Albon with Williams. No, that's great though. Like we're getting
Alexander Hamilton. Did you know he's not only a founding father, he's a F1 driver.
He's also he is the father of the Coast Guard though. He founded the Revenue Cutter Service.
No kidding.
So yeah. So
that
near and dear to my heart, beyond the musical theater nerd in me. But I mean that's the thing. Look again, this is where fantasy is so funky because P14 on the fantasy list is Logan Sargent, and his entire strategy is be the guy who doesn't crash.
Yeah.
And look, 27 points for $6.3 million. He's less than a third of the price of Lewis Hamilton, who was netted only 32 total 34 points. So again, you want the top and you want the bottom. The rest is just too expensive.
Absolutely. We're going to get ready to talk about Miami.
Yeah.
We have I already talked about the fact that you can get Max Verstappen and all the constructors on your team. And the big question is whether or not that's a good idea. And I do have one team with it. I'll be able to talk more about it, but it all comes down to now Jogan Yu and Valtteri Bottas and how well Kick Sauber does.
Right.
To whether or not my entire plan works. So yes, how well Max Verstappen, whether or not you should have Max Verstappen on your team is dependent on how well Kick Sauber does, which is great. Now we get to play a favorite game called Prospect Suspect.
Yeah.
All right.
Do it.
So for anybody uninitiated, my wife, who is a softball coach, told me about a thing where, especially in athletics, you can have you're either a prospect or a suspect. And the analogy is when you go up to bat, if you're the prospect and you strike out, then it's okay. They just had a rough day. He just everybody strikes out sometimes. You're still doing fine. Don't worry. You're a good batter still. If you're a suspect, then you walk up and you strike out. It's like, well, I told you. And it goes the opposite way, too, where if I'm a prospect and I walk up and I hit a home run, it's like, oh, good job, man, you hit a home run. If I walk up and I'm the mentality toward me is that I'm suspect, I'll hit it over the park and be like, well, yeah, everybody, blind squirrels find a nut every once in a while. That was just a pitch down the middle. It doesn't matter. He's still a bad player.
Right.
So we're going to go through and do that with the F1 drivers.
And if you're just stumbling onto this podcast as well, you're going to find that Paul and I have a lot of points of confluence here. One is we both like fast cars. 2, we're both former military officers. And 3, we both married women who are infinitely more athletically inclined than we are.
So true. So true.
So we are stealing analogies from their lives and their passions. And so thank you,
yes,
our wives, for that. But yeah, you want to just go down the list?
Let's go. Prospect suspect, Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen. He's a prospect.
He's a prospect. 100%.
If something goes wrong, it's not his fault.
Yes.
I'm gonna go say the same thing with Charles Leclerc. But he's reliable. He's only a few points behind Max. He doesn't make the headlines all that often just because there's a lot of drama elsewhere. But he's the no drama fast driving Ferrari guy.
Absolutely, 100% prospect. You said it perfectly. I couldn't say it any better myself.
Thank you.
Sergio Perez, he is prospect as well.
Same. Yep.
He's in. There's a lot of there's a lot of buzz in the offseason, and right now when all the drivers are getting ready to move or who's staying in, who's coming, who's going, all this, people love trying to decide if Sergio Perez, whose contract's up at the end of the year, if he's going to go somewhere. He's not. He's a number 2 driver unless somebody's throwing money at him or unless there's someplace he personally wants to go. Red Bull will not get rid of him.
Yeah.
I don't think they will. I think that'd be super foolish.
I don't see there being a better fit for him either.
No, for sure. Prospect suspect Carlos Sainz.
He's well onto the prospect side in my mind. The only thing that would give me a talking point, but this would be like me saying like, oh, I have a paper due and I have to have 500 words, is if he and Charles Leclerc end up close together, they have been in some risky situations where both of them want to win. But again, no, prospect.
Yeah, and unless Ferrari starts cutting him loose and lets him die on the vine, but they won't because they want to win a championship.
Yeah.
So as long as he's performing, they're going to keep putting money at him.
Yep.
Completely agree. Prospect suspect Lando Norris.
Lando Norris prospect. The dude is. I see him getting a win at some point this season.
Correct.
Yeah. So he's a rising star who's proven himself, and he's in a decent car.
Yeah, and I'll even lump Oscar Piastri in with that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they're both clear prospects, but they're also a very clear 1 and 2 driver.
Yes, absolutely, and especially when how they did their turnaround last year in 2023, how they started out slow and then advanced in fantasy to become like 2 of like the really really strong good drivers. I'm still waiting for that to occur for 2024. Like they talk a big game about, oh, well, we have a lot to do. Sure, but then they always pull it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Prospect suspect George Russell.
George Russell, I think he's more under the radar just because he's not Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. But
he's scoring more points. He's consistently higher, finishing at a higher place than Hamilton is. I'm going to say he's a prospect. I think he just comes off as like a smarmy little dude, though. Just because he's not a bigger name, and I don't know.
No, I completely agree. I think the only reason he's not on a lot more fantasy teams, I'm not sure what his percentage is, but I know as soon as his value was 10 million, I'd probably figure out how to get him on my team.
Oh, sure. But absolutely.
Like everybody else at 19.5, at 19.1, he's prospect, but I just don't have the room in my budget for him.
Exactly. Yeah. He is exactly that middle ground you need to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah. Fernando Alonso, prospect suspect.
Prospect, man.
Yeah.
Again, if you're going to play in that middle ground, which you shouldn't, he's the kind of driver that that I've been tempted to throw in there. It's like, oh, you know what? Aston Martin can make waves this year. If I have them as a constructor and I have Fernando, I can double dip and maybe get some points, and they will get you some. And it's one of those, like, analytically, it's not a stupid move, but it's not gonna get you competitive on the internet on the world scale.
Completely agree, and I think it's not that necessarily Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso isn't good. It's just you're in a world where where Red Bull Racing is the dominant force that it is, and Ferrari is doing really well.
Right.
As soon as you made it so that Red Bull and Ferrari were even just a little less reliable, call them instead of a top 3 team, and call them a top 6 team, then I think that would increase Fernando Alonso's value considerably, because it'd be more flexibility at the top and more of a chance to get in.
Yeah.
But the top's just so locked out right now.
Yeah. Fernando can work well for you if your league is not focusing on constructor strength.
True.
If you have people who are like, oh, I got some really good drivers, as long as you have strong constructors with Fernando, then you're in decent shape. So
yeah, agreed. And that actually wouldn't be a bad idea. Hey, F1, you should listen to this. It actually wouldn't be a bad idea to have there be some leagues where you lock your constructors at the very beginning of the season.
Oh, and you're just locked in?
And you're just locked. So you can move around your drivers, but you pick your constructors and you're locked in. And then you use your remaining budget to move around your drivers.
Oh, see, I have to disagree with you there, because I think by week 4 you're going to have people who realize that they made a mistake.
Yeah,
they're going to completely check out of the rest of the season, and your web traffic is going to drop dramatically, just because it's like, well, I just screwed myself for the next 20 weeks.
And then how about this? Maybe it would be a way. Yeah, you're right. I think you're right. Then maybe it'd be a way if there's like an individual league, like have there be able to put those rules on where it's like you have your main competitive world,
yeah,
and then you have your other world, And then as soon as you and I want to have a set of 3 teams in a private league, where in this private league, we, have you can't move around your constructors. You have to have this one driver.
Oh, I
and
see.
then for us, that's it. But we're not racked and stacked in the world, if that makes sense.
Oh, I got you. So you have your international
Yes.
level one where you can pick anyone.
And we still have our 3 teams,
Okay.
and all that stays the same.
But then within a private league, it's more like your other fantasy sports where it's there is only the teams available to pick
Correct.
from, and if they've been picked, you can't by somebody else. You can't
exactly.
pick them.
And so you have like how we have right now, how you separate out into private leagues, and you have to use your 3 teams in those private leagues.
I see.
But if you're like, I'm going to create a private league with Ben and with these people and these people and these people, and then we get our own drivers, we can have our own set of rules. And I can say, you know what, in this league, it's never going to be racked with the world. So that doesn't matter.
The problem there is the grid is so small too.
It is.
So it would have to be like you can pick one constructor and maybe 2 drivers.
And that would be good.
So-
Just some way to make it so it's not globally ranked.
I hear what
But
you're saying.
if you and me want to have different rules, we can all sit here and say, hey, everybody, we're going to pick our constructors and not move it, or everyone has to have Lewis Hamilton on it. We can, but then it's going to hamstring us in the world standings. We don't want to do that.
Right.
So you can say, hey, here's this league. You're not in the world standings. Put whatever, but here's these different caveats you can have. Then we have a world standing where, guess what? You have to have, how about this? Here's a world standing where you have to have Haas and Williams as your constructors. Done. From start to beginning,
that's interesting.
Everybody has to have Haas and Williams. So guess what? In this world standing, who has Haas and Williams? You're in that world standing now, but you get to move around your other drivers. So then in the global galactic league, got it. We're all still moving everything around. But how are you doing in the Haas and Williams league?
I mean, at that point, you would just call that the drivers only.
The drivers only, yeah.
Right.
But then you could set the rules about which drivers you have or which leagues you have, and then there could be 50 different leagues, 50 different world standings.
Absolutely.
But you'd have to be able to pick different teams and micromanage those.
Yes.
And then you would maybe have, I don't know, no salary cap, unlimited transfers, moving around your guy. I don't know. We could see there's a whole lot of options.
That could be cool.
All you have to do is be an internet creator. And I say that because the internet's just magic and voodoo as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know. Maybe I just ruined that entire thing. We'll have to see.
No, we just went way into the theoretical there.
Way into theoretical. Okay, so now let me get a clean start here. Where were we at?
We had gotten to I romanticized Fernando Alonso for way too long.
Right. And then now we're at
Kevin Magnussen.
Kevin Magnussen. So we're setting Kevin Magnussen, prospect suspect.
Prospect all day long.
Boom.
$8.7 million, and he's gotten you 48 points. He is what you're looking for with I've got a few dollars left. I'm getting me a Magnussen.
Yes. He is very strong. And that is a perfect segue into right behind him, right behind Kevin Magnussen. Prospect suspect, Lewis Hamilton.
Suspect.
Why suspect?
Because his car is not up to the caliber of the driver, and he's expensive.
Yeah.
So
as soon as you could get Lewis Hamilton for $6 million, or you get Lewis Hamilton for even $10 million.
Oh, you know what though? I mean, let's look at next year.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari for $19 million. I'm buying him.
Yeah.
For
sure. Esteban Ocon, prospect suspect. And I'm going to take this one. He should be prospect. How about this? Esteban Ocon is the quintessential reason to have this discussion.
Yeah.
He is 100% suspect in my mind.
Why is that?
Because he drives for Alpine. And at the beginning, Alpine was having so many problems.
Right.
They were slow. They are slow. There's no positive PR about it. Anytime you look it up, it's, we're dragging. This isn't working out. And I can go ahead and bring up his stats. But
that's where this is interesting though, because you could say the exact same thing for Williams, and I'm going to be interested to hear what you have to say about Logan Sargent. It's so hard to divorce the fantasy statistics from the from who's making waves in the media and for their standard performance. So because I mean they've scored no real neither driver has scored any real F1 points this year. a total non-issue team.
Yep.
That is sinking from the mid tier into the kind of the dreck of the bottom four.
Yeah.
But from a fantasy perspective, 9 million getting you 32 points.
That's strong.
It's
not bad.
It's at least it's at least strong enough to keep them in the conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't feel one way or another about them.
I feel so suspect about Alpine, and I feel so suspect about Esteban Ocon. And this is and you're absolutely right. Why Ocon? But why am I backing up Sargent? I have Sargent on all my teams.
Yeah.
No clue.
Well, and
I was Wookie's. How about this? For me, Logan Sargent has been prospect since he joined. I've been waiting for him to do something good.
Okay.
As soon as last year when he kept crashing, I'm like, all right,
sure.
this isn't his season. I hope he's still around next season. Off my teams, done.
Right.
This year, I didn't have him on my teams. As soon as he started not crashing, I got him on my teams, and now he's doing well, and I was putting up points. Not winning. He's not DNFing. One DNF deletes. Two DNFs delete everything he's ever done.
Of course.
But so I was waiting, and
but the same is true with Esteban Ocon.
Exactly, and that is why I am looking at these numbers and saying I should, if I like Logan Sargent, I should like Esteban Ocon. I have the utmost faith, and I'm willing to take that risk with Logan Sargent because I knew he could do it. He's been a prospect. I've just been waiting for him to do well. Esteban Ocon, who's more experienced,
sure,
driving an Alpine, I'm like, nope, I'm just waiting for him to suck.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for him to crash. He's driving an Alpine. I'm just waiting for it. That is, and I understand that is wrong, but in my mind, Esteban Ocon is prospect, Logan Sargent suspect, and even now looking at the numbers, Esteban Ocon, both drivers don't have any DNFs. Both drivers have been performing roughly the same.
Both Alpine drivers?
No, sorry. So Esteban Ocon and Logan Sargent.
Oh, okay.
Esteban Ocon has 5 more points than Logan Sargent. So all things being equal, yes, Esteban Ocon is a little bit more expensive, but he's getting you more points.
He is.
I am looking at Esteban Ocon saying, no, man, no, don't go near him. Looking at Logan Sargent going, yeah, man, he's the one you want.
I gotcha.
No reason for it.
Yeah, well, and again,
zero.
Next week they could totally be flip-flopped.
It could be totally
after Miami. Could be a whole different ball game.
But as soon as Esteban Ocon in Miami gets a DNF, I'm like, see, I told you, just waiting for him to DNF.
I'm with you.
As soon as Logan Sargent gets a DNF, I'm like, nah, man, he's been doing great. He didn't mean to do that. He's able to save it. All the times he spins out, he's able to save it.
Yeah.
He just hit it once.
Yep.
And it's the quintessential prospect suspect of the fallacy of my view of us as fans. I'm like, nah. Anyway,
I gotcha.
I'd call it attribution error, call it whatever. I think I beat that horse, but yeah.
No, fair. All right. Dude, 12, Nico Hülkenberg.
Nico Hülkenberg. Prospect suspect.
Prospect.
All the way with Haas.
I mean, for the price and the consistency, you're not going to get a better bargain.
Completely agree. Agree.
And so that's great. And again, it's one thing we neglected to mention, but Nico Hülkenberg going to kick Sauber. And I think it's going to be Team Audi.
It'll be
next
Audi
year,
next
which
year.
is
They
good.
already bought it. They just haven't.
Yeah.
Which how fast must Kick Sauber have been in and out if they got it? And
I have no idea.
I'm not in that marketing world, but yeah. So yeah, and then and this is actually an interesting point because I think you were the one last week where you pontificated in our hot goss section about putting Nico Hülkenberg and Carlos Sainz in Audi. Was that it?
I was talking about how cool would it be if Sainz went to Aston Martin.
Oh, okay.
I believe Sainz is on his way to kick Sauber or Audi.
Okay, really?
They are pursuing him.
Interesting.
And there have been articles alluding to kind of an offer too big to ignore. So,
okay.
But that being said, nothing is set in stone. And there was also articles about Sainz being in conversations with Red Bull as well. But
really?
But again, I don't see Sergio Perez going anywhere.
No,
so
I really don't.
So I think we're going to see Sainz and Hülkenberg on the new Team Audi next year.
That would be interesting. For Sainz and Hülkenberg going on Audi, what do you know? Because I know you have your finger on the pulse of the news a little bit better than I do. Have you heard anything about with Audi buying Kick Sauber, or with Audi taking over, with Kick Sauber becoming Audi? How much does that change the overall management? Like, I guess is it just basically rebranding a new sticker? Now Audi gets the thing, or is it actually truly change the team? I don't know. And
Well, it has to. They must. If they're willing to pursue, I mean, if they were willing to snag Nico Hülkenberg this early in the season,
true. They have a plan.
That means that there is something that enticed him, because Haas is doing great things this year.
Mm-hmm.
That team went from disaster to contender in the course of a year. And again, this is with two drivers who historically don't like each other. They found a way to cooperate. They're doing great things in that lower tier. So for him to be willing to walk away from that, he has to see opportunity to be competitive. And if Kick Sauber / Audi is willing to pursue Carlos Sainz in a meaningful way, both of these drivers want to win. They're hungry to win. And so they have to be able to demonstrate that, hey, no, we're going to change the culture. We're going to change the nature of our teams, because again, every time we've done this prospect suspect list, it's been Kick Sauber in spite of the drivers.
That's true.
And it's it's a fundamental team issue more than it is an individual driver issue. So if drivers are being enticed, they are seeing the potential for major change from what we are seeing in this season.
No, that's true. Yeah, they have. That's a very good point. Okay,
so there's definitely got to be a curtain where they've said, hey, in addition to the money, we've also got this.
Look what's here, and it's good enough to get Nico Hülkenberg there,
and potentially Carlos Sainz.
And what do you think about this? Nico Hülkenberg, he's going to be the second driver to Carlos Sainz?
He has to be.
Or do you think they're walking in more, like, maybe not money wise, but does that mean that Audi is looking to be they're all looking to be a championship team?
Sure.
But
Hülkenberg's been around for a long time without a win. He's a good reliable driver, but he's also aging up there a little bit.
That's true, and you're not going to get a win with Haas unless the front half of the field wreck.
Right. No, it's going to be one of the. I think he is the driver that you have that where if your number one driver crashes out, you still have potential to get in the points if you have a good enough car.
No, I'll take that.
So
I'll take that. Prospect suspect Lance Stroll.
No, I'm not a fan of this guy.
Now, and how about this? Aston Martin got it right that time. Aston Martin. Hey. I will gladly work for Aston Martin Racing in any way they want. I will sweep the floors if that means I get to go and be part of the racing culture and go to the track. I'm not going to sweep headquarters. I'll sweep the paddock out.
Oh, and they're also building out an entire a new test facility, like a multi-million-dollar test facility now.
Do you guys need some announcers? Like we will become Aston Martin pros. But I say all that to say that I have to be suspect of him, but he's got 29 points. Like, he's not doing bad. His value isn't doing bad for it.
$13 million, 29 points. I don't know, man.
No. So how about this? Are we suspect of him? Or how about this? Are we suspect of him because of his performance? Or are we suspect of him because we are suspect of nepotism?
Yes. Yeah.
Because we've said it before. Like, I'm like, oh, nepotism. Yeah, but as soon as, my dad or my uncle or somebody related to me owned Aston Martin, I'd be like, so, bro, you need a driver? Nepotism me all the way. I want in.
Well, Well, and that's the thing. That's why I want to like Aston Martin. I like Fernando Alonso. He's driving the same car that Lance Stroll's driving. But, man, what a gap. What a gap in performance.
Yeah.
And so for the money, yes, Lance Stroll is finishing in the points typically, but he
and his DNFs are his fault.
And other people's DNFs are his fault.
That's true.
So,
all right. Oh, poor Daniel Ricciardo. But other people's DNFs are his fault. And especially because you mentioned earlier, we're military officers. There's a huge, at least in the U.S. military right now, there's a huge culture among the officer corps of, no, you accept responsibility for your actions and the actions of those underneath you.
Right.
And as soon as he was like, man, it's not my fault that I rear-ended him, it's like,
okay. But and so taking all of that away, would I rely on him as a driver for spending $13 million? No, I wouldn't. Let's see if you could scroll up just a little bit for me. I mean, so you got Nico Hülkenberg has 31 points. He's $7.6 million. Lance Stroll has 29 points at $13 million. If I had built out my team and I had Nico Hülkenberg and I had $6 million left over and I filled in my roster, am I going to quote unquote upgrade to Lance Stroll?
No,
I'm going to leave $6 million unspent.
That's true. That's a very good way to look at it.
So he is suspect to me.
I think that's a perfect capper. Yes, he is suspect. Logan Sargent, our countryman, prospect or suspect?
I love the guy. I can't in good conscience say he's a prospect yet, because I have him on the majority of my teams, the majority of weeks, but I'm also thrilled when he does not crash. And so that to me that's the very essence of prospect suspect, is that I'm thrilled when something doesn't go wrong. So I'm pulling for him, but he is suspect to me.
I will look at the exact same and go the opposite way. I think he is prospect.
Okay.
And the reason is, first off, because we're pulling for him. And second off, he hasn't hit the wall. And I think this is the exact reason for prospect suspect, where if you, and everything you just said is true, all of the facts we all know, as soon as we look at the facts and say, yep, and ergo he's going to crash, that's prospect. Yep, all the facts, ergo he's going to do great. That's flip-flop that. Yep, he's going to crash, that's suspect. Or he's going to do great, that's prospect. And again, this is a quintessential sort of thing where we're like, no, man, he's good. No, man, he's good. He's right there.
Same data, fundamental difference.
Same data, fundamental difference. Truth doesn't change, but yeah, the way we interpret it does. So no, I think we have that split there. I'm keeping him on the team. I'm waiting for him to do continue to do good things.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna call him. My mentality is prospect for him, where your mentality is sub.
I'll play him, but yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, Ollie Behrman, he is here. He's in the list. We're gonna talk about him. He is 15th. It's rough that he had one race and he's better and he has more fantasy points than a quarter of the field.
No, absolutely.
That will diminish.
From what I'm hearing though is and I apologize. This segment probably should have been like all of 8 minutes long, where we just go prospect, suspect.
Oh, that's true. But we're going into it.
But we're talking, okay. So I'm hearing rumblings that he will be a Haas driver next year to replace Nico Hülkenberg.
Really?
So that could be interesting.
That would be. I wonder what kind of offers he's getting if he's going to Haas, or what Haas is boasting about for next year.
Yeah.
Also, as soon as, again, if you have a chance to get into F1, then you're going.
I mean, and Ferrari is already chock full now with a 7-time world champion and Charles Leclerc.
So you're not going to, you'd have to be a third driver for them for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
That no one else leapfrogs you. But that'd be real interesting to see him in Haas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll call him I'll call him prospect for right now.
Same.
I think he's doing well, but he doesn't have a seat yet.
Nope.
Yuki Tsunoda, prospect suspect.
This is a tough one.
This is.
Because, again,
I bounced back and forth. Last year, the first year I played Fantasy F1 in 2020, I went just yo-yoing back and forth on Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah.
And
I think that remains the same. He keeps being placed with people who are supposed to outcompete him, and then he holds his own well enough. I'll go prospect for the price.
Yeah.
For the no, I don't know, because I just dumped on Esteban Ocon, and for just a little bit more money, he's got more than double the points. Well, I'm gonna go suspect.
Go suspect, and I will go. I'm gonna go prospect.
Okay.
But fully acknowledge everything you say, because the reason why he doesn't, I don't want to. I mean, I'm not going to try and deep dive into his race history, but he has 13 points and he has a couple DNFs.
He does.
And so he's like low in the black, big red, low in the black, big red, low in the black sort of thing.
Yeah.
So he is a good example of what you have to be careful of with the bottom drivers is that, the only difference between him and the Haas drivers is the Haas drivers don't DNF.
Right.
And whether it's a team or whether it's a driver, I would say, or last race, whether it's somebody tapping your tire.
Well, and that's the thing. When he finishes, he is the best V-carb driver.
Yes, completely
God,
agreed.
It sounds so weird to say V-carb.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Baby Red Bull.
We just got Baby Red Bull V-carb. Oh gosh, but yeah, he is the best driver among them if he doesn't get hit.
Right.
So, all right, moving on to Joe Ganyu with Kick Sauber. I think
we just have to say, Zhou Ganyu and Valtteri Bottas.
Yep.
I think they're both prospects. I think Kick Sauber is suspect.
Couldn't have said it better. Yes. So Zhou Ganyu, which is P17 in the points with 9 points, and Valtteri Bottas, which is P20 in the points with a -5. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Kick Sauber's suspect, but both of those drivers prospect.
Yeah.
Pierre Gasly.
I just don't know much about. I don't care about Pierre Gasly. So.
He's Alpine, man.
Yeah.
They're just. I'm gonna call him suspect just because I wouldn't put him on the team. But again, I'm very much open to the fact that we should probably put Alpine in the same in the same rank as in the same category as Kick Sauber, where it might just be their mechanical issues. The drivers might be great. We don't know. Like Pierre Gasly. I'm not digging into all of his race history yet, but he just hasn't done much. And whether it's him or the car, I don't know.
And they also aren't. Yeah, the two Alpine drivers do not like each other at all. And
really? I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, no, and that absolutely matters because you look at Haas. The two guys in Haas, not fans of each other, but they found a way to put aside their differences. They race cooperatively. They listen to their team principal, and so yeah. So I'm gonna leave Gasly as suspect as well.
All right,
team dynamics.
No. Alex Albon with Williams, prospect or suspect? I'm gonna go suspect because he has 1 point.
Yeah,
like I'm sorry, man. Like, and especially for somebody who the team's obviously putting a lot of faith in him.
Oh, for sure. He is the team's clear P1
driver, lead driver,
driver one, number one driver.
Yeah. And he's just not fantasy wise. Maybe in real world it's a lot different.
And that's the big disclaimer here. I think the guy's got potential. I think he's got a future. As far as a fantasy pick,
yeah.
So
completely agreed. And then the guy who broke my heart, but I've been dreading having to make this decision, this entire conversation. Daniel Ricciardo with VCarb / Baby RB, $8.8 million, negative 15 points. Prospect or suspect?
I'm putting the guy on my team because so the last few races have just been the worst possible luck ever.
Yeah. Really? So prospect for you?
I see. That's the problem. This should be an emotionless discussion.
Yes,
but
it's not.
You look at the last couple of races. He just needs a moment.
Yes,
and so I want this week. At probably team point personal cost. I want to give this guy his moment and be like, yeah, Danny.
Yeah,
go do the racing thing. I don't know what I was going to say with that sentence, but he can drive a car when he's not getting hit or his car is not braking or something. Has he done a lot of stupid stuff? Yeah, but I don't think the negative 15 total fantasy points is reflective of his skill sets.
No, it's reflective of Lance Stroll not looking down. Of Lance Stroll looking into the turn instead of looking ahead,
right,
and rear-ending it.
So I think Miami is going to be his glorious turnaround moment.
Yeah, I'll take that.
So,
but if Miami, if you think Miami might be Daniel Ricciardo's glorious turnaround moment, I have been waiting. So does that mean he is for you like Logan Sargent was for me over the last couple of years, where I'm just like, all right, man, I'll give you a shot. We'll wait. We're going to see what you do. Because I'm as big a, let's rewind the tape to the beginning of the season. Man, I was seeing Daniel Ricciardo's praise. And I still, and my belief on his ability, my belief on his capability, my belief on all of them hasn't changed.
Okay. So, the logic was all there. But so let's relabel this then. Okay. Miami is the make or break moment because I think the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been, man, like Daniel Ricciardo really needs to prove himself. And the last 2 or 3 weeks, just crazy out of control things have happened that have been like, okay, mulligan. He will either be the assured. He's not gonna be on Team Red Bull.
Yeah, not right now. Not next season.
Not next season for sure.
He might hopefully be around.
But yeah, this week will either show he is the guy moving forward for Baby RB for another year. Or it's going to be like, hey, get that Liam Lawson kid on the phone.
That's a good point.
I think after this or in the coming weeks here, because it'll be, there's only so many times that your failure is out of your control, and this is definitely a make or break week for him.
Yeah, what's that joke? What do you call somebody who's consistently lucky?
Prepared
and good.
Yeah.
What do you call somebody who's consistently unlucky, unprepared, or
right?
Just not good. And man, and I don't want to get into the hot gossip about what we think he'll do. I completely agree that getting him here is the right. That having him have the seat was the correct move. But as soon as you test him out in a Red Bull, any of these drivers would probably do really great things if they were sitting in an RB20.
Exactly.
And they had all season, they had years of development to get it all accustomed to him. but you put them in a baby RB/V carb that maybe didn't have all the evolution, and then, well, crap, man. Then now you're looking at Liam Lawson, like you were saying. Geesh. All right, that sums up our prospect suspect, and I think you had a segment that you were wanting to kick off.
I do.
Sweet.
So data is a funny thing. Social media algorithms are a funny thing. So we're 40 some odd episodes into this podcast, and we're having a blast. We're still reaching a relatively small audience, but to be honest, it's a very niche category, and that doesn't stop us from again really loving what we do. But what was funny was we noticed that last week, Paul had his segment, the Hot Goss segment, where he talked briefly about Aston Martin and particularly one Taylor Swift.
Yep.
And her referencing Aston Martin. And the little clips that we put on social media that referenced Taylor Swift exponentially outperformed everything else we've ever talked about, which is funny and sad. It's more sad than funny.
Yeah.
So, given that we are still a very small potatoes podcast and we're trying to get our leg up in the world in whatever way we can, we're going to pander to the algorithm just a little bit and make sure that we mention Taylor Swift this week. So join me in a new segment called Pander Express, where I've decided to describe the status of each constructor using a Taylor Swift song title.
Awesome.
So VCarb / Baby RB. Given the issues with Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll, VCarb's song is "You're Not Sorry." Red Bull was an easy one; it's just "Untouchable." Kick Sauber / Audi in their attempts to grab new talent. They just snagged Nico Hülkenberg. Yeah, Nico Hülkenberg, and they're going after Carlos Sainz. Is "You Belong with Me."
And keep in mind, I'm genuinely laughing because I haven't heard any of these. These are just stuff you've come up with so far. So this is great.
So Williams, and again, Logan Sargent, we love you. But off of her new, what's the new album called?
Oh, it's
the Tortured
Poets Society.
Okay,
or Tortured Poets
Department.
Yeah.
Dead Poets Society.
Dead
Great
Poets
movie.
Society.
Anyway, but so Williams is "My boy only breaks his favorite toys." And then Aston Martin, we're gonna stick with Lance Stroll and the Daniel Ricciardo incident.
Okay,
it's "Look What You Made Me Do." It was a weird concertina effect,
I just don't know what happened. It was just
it couldn't have been avoided. You stopped. I had to hit you.
Stopped.
An Alpine, just because drivers don't get along, we got bad blood. Ferrari, again, they're parting ways with Carlos Sainz, and we are never, ever, ever getting back together. And I feel bad for Mercedes on this one, but this is me trying.
Oh.
All right, then we got
Lewis Hamilton.
McLaren, just as they're getting increasingly competitive, and that orange is looking a little scarier in the rearview mirror of a couple of the top tier guys. It's "I Bet You Think About Me." And then on the same note, Haas, as they've been becoming a competitor as well, we're giving them some daylight. So that is our honorable Taylor Swift mention Pander Express segment. Thank you for bearing with us. We'll get back to some actual substantive F1 talk now.
I want to keep Pander Express on.
No, we can do that because again, week to week, she's got so many songs. We can switch it up.
I'm gonna live because they say laughing makes you live longer. I'm gonna live longer because of this segment.
Oh,
I really feel I am. That is great. Oh, great. Well, I think that covers all we had. Any parting shots or save rounds or anything like that?
As always, if you like what you're listening to, recommend it to a friend. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a 5-star review. Leave a comment, and that'll really help us out. Hey, and thanks for stopping by. We really enjoy doing this podcast, and like our opening line is we'd be having this conversation anyway. So we're glad you came to join us on it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Cheers.